Hello and welcome to ADHD Fest, the podcast all about adult ADHD with a little bit of law of attraction and self-development thrown in the mix there. I am your host, Tara Pratt, and today the topic has been chosen by a listener. Hello to you. I'm not going to mention your name because I forgot to ask whether I could, but I got a message over on Instagram from a listener that has requested a topic, so I'm going to read it to you now. Can you do an episode on family life and how you share the household chores, meal planning, events, date nights, etc.? I'd love an insight on how other families with neurodivergencies run a household and tips on how to make it easier. So, I love to oblige, especially to requests, so definitely do write to me if you have any. I read them all. I don't get back to them all straight away because I do have ADHD and sometimes I feel a bit overwhelmed, but I will eventually come back to you. So please do send your requests over, but this one specifically I find super interesting and I might have to ask my husband's permission before I put this one out, but I'm going to record it anyway and see how we go. The dynamics of a family can be hard regardless of neurodivergence. Honestly, in today's society, we're trying to work through a real backlog of patriarchy, and particularly for women. We have fought for a long time for equal rights and the right to work because, it's not so long ago that a woman's place was in the home and we couldn't have bank accounts without men and we couldn't vote and stuff like that. So we've fought really hard for equality, but then the world hasn't changed. So we're allowed that equality now. We're allowed to work, but the actual setup of the work hasn't changed to accommodate that. So whereby we used to be housewives and run the whole household and didn't work and that was our job. Now we do work, but those responsibilities haven't really shifted. It's still expected of mothers to do the lion's share of the household chores. In fact, you don't even have to be mothers, just women are expected to do most of the household chores, family admin if you haven't got children but you are married. I know most of my friends, most of the women I meet are totally responsible for remembering family birthdays, arranging things, sending out cards, looking after elderly family members, keeping on top of those things that keep the community together, basically the caregiving women are responsible for. So once you add kids into the mix as well, is a whole different ball game, like trying to take care of kids. And it's reflected in every relationship, every heterosexual relationship. I can only speak from my experience, and I am in a heterosexual relationship. I have a husband, I have a teenage stepdaughter, and I have a young son who's 7 years old. And I am very much the feminist. I was raised in a background where my mum and dad worked together. They were both freelance musicians. So my mum was a singer and my dad was a guitarist. And then they went into theatre production together. And then they went into flipping houses together. Can you feel the ADHD vibes? No one is diagnosed, by the way. It's just my guess that that's probably what it is because they're creatives and they did a lot of different things. So I was brought up in a non-traditional household. My dad really was involved in the cooking. He liked to cook and they both shared like household duties. But my mum was definitely more involved in us as kids. She was more... Well, my dad was involved. He did a lot of the physical effort. So he was like picking up, dropping off. But he wasn't involved emotionally with us. Like my mum was the one that would know exactly where I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to be doing and getting my outfits together and making sure that I had things. And then my dad was like the worker bee who would carry out those things. So even though it wasn't a fully traditional household, there were elements of it. So I came into marriage and a relationship from that perspective, and I've always been, I never knew it, but pretty much a feminist. I never knew what feminism really was. I still don't really know in any depth what feminism is, but I used to think it was people who didn't want to wear bras or makeup, and I really shied away from it. Now I'm older, I realise that is not the case, and I probably am a feminist without even realising it. Apologies, I just had to stop for a big cough that I wasn't expecting. But yeah, so I was a feminist, I'm pretty sure, without realising it for most of my life. So I didn't know anything else. I didn't come from that traditional background where my mum would have the dinner on the table every night and we all worshipped men. I had 2 younger brothers. We were pretty much all equal. If anything, the women are dominant in my family, which is funny because it's mostly a male family, but the women are the powerful force, the dominant ones, and the men are all very manly men, but they're not the chauvinist type. They're not lager louts. They're not down the pub. They're not at the footy every weekend. They're not misogynistic. I just haven't really been surrounded by that at all. So when I've gone out into the world, it's been a big shock to my system. When I've come across people like that, I'm like, oh my God, how can this even be real? How can you think that way? It's not like they openly think men are superior to women. It's ingrained in them. They don't even realise it. So obviously when I met my husband, I was never going to go for a guy that would be chauvinistic or believe that women should be at home or women are... I don't know how to describe it. The misogynistic ways are so subtle. Unless they're like extreme, obviously, it's not really polarizing views. It's just the little ways that they signal that men are more important or better than women. So I was never going to go for that type of guy. I've always gone for a more metro kind of guy, if that makes sense. Still, pretty manly. I like my men manly, but they're more sensitive and open to women. So Pete, my husband, was very much that vibe. And I am getting to the point, by the way, I am getting to the question of our household. Pete was very much that vibe of, he's not ashamed to, have skincare. He's not ashamed to talk to me about my feelings. He is a really happy guy, really open, and seemed really sensitive and lovely. So we've got married. And he already had my stepdaughter. She was 5, Sophia, when I met him. She's now 15. We're 10 years in. And a part of the attraction, why I was so attracted to him, was because he was a brilliant dad, really hands-on. He's always had 50-50 custody of Sophia, which I know, particularly in the UK, is not that common. For whatever reason, who knows what the setup is. But Pete's setup was, and always has been, he has Sophia 50% of the time. And he was just such a lovely dad. And, really self-sufficient, because to have a female child who's 5 years old at 30, a 30-year-old man who works full-time and has her 50% of the time, obviously he had to do a lot of the main caregiving. He had to know what she was doing. He had to do her hair every day. He had to be the mum. If you're going to look at it in a traditional way, it was like she had 2 mum-style parents because they were responsible solely for her 50% of the time. And so that was like a big attraction for me. Cut to, I move in with Pete. We get engaged. And obviously, I didn't want to take over from Sophia's mum because she's got a mum and she loves her mum. But I still needed to kind of work out my space. And honestly, I made a rod for my own back because I was young. I didn't have a child of my own. And I really wanted to make Sophia feel comfortable. I really wanted to add to Peter's life. And I was excited to take on that role. I didn't need to do any of the basics for Soph. Pete had that covered. So I did all of the fun stuff on top that I could use my ADHD talents for. I didn't know I was ADHD at the time, but say for her 6th birthday, she was with us the morning of, and Peter would normally, get some presents, put them in present bags, and that would be it. But I wanted to put my own girly flair on it. So for his 6th birthday, I really went all out with balloons. He bought all the presents. I wrapped them all beautifully. I put them all out in a certain way. I had music playing for the morning she came down for her birthday. I just made it magical. I added a touch of magic and I really enjoyed doing that and I loved it. But that kind of slowly but surely became my role. I started to take on more and more of the Soph stuff, especially because she was a girl. She'd start asking me questions rather than Pete, and slowly but surely she just became like half my responsibility when she was at our house. So if you think about it with Pete, he had her 50% of the time, but it kind of became 25%, not time-wise, but care-wise, because I would take on half when she was at our house. I would get the groceries, I would keep on top of her schedule at school. He would still pick her up and drop her off all the time. He would still take her to tennis. They would still do activities together, but I took on a lot of the responsibility for him and I loved it. But looking back, I don't think I should have done that, because then we got married. We had Theo, my son. Soph absolutely loved him. She was desperate for a sibling. But then my life became a lot harder. For one, I had undiagnosed ADHD and it really came out raging after I had my son. I'm pretty sure now, looking back, I had postnatal anxiety. And so I couldn't do all those responsibilities that I'd been doing for the last few years. I met Soph when she was 5 and I had Theo just before she turned 8. So it was nearly 3 years that I'd been in her life doing those things. And suddenly I couldn't keep up with it. But Pete, because I'd been so helpful, I'd taken on more at work. And so he was away quite a bit. Apologies, I had to stop for another cough. But he was away quite a bit, but also he'd gotten used to me just knowing what was going on. I found it so difficult, really difficult. And it caused a lot of arguments between Pete and I. And one thing that Pete's always been very good at is he's always cooked. He's always cooked the dinner, and honestly, it's such a big help. Like, we all know the pain of trying to work out what's for dinner every night and then cooking it every single night from now until eternity. It's a real pain. So that is one thing that he does so well. He is forever cooking. One thing we did change is we got HelloFresh as soon as Theo was born. I'm not affiliated with HelloFresh, but it was like the best choice we've ever made. And 7 years later, we still have HelloFresh like 4 to 5 times a week. So we changed that. So it wasn't so much that we had to choose what to have for dinner. I was still in charge of grocery shopping for the whole family. I was still in charge. Basically, when Theo came along, it automatically fell on me that I was wholly responsible for him. And Pete did help physically look after him. Like, obviously I was so tired by the time he got home. Sometimes he was away like 2 nights and I'd be like, Pete, please come home. I need a shower and you can look after the baby. And he would help physically, but he would need a list from me of like what to do. I would need to leave instructions. And so what it meant was I could never relax even when I was trying to relax upstairs, I could never have any relaxation because I knew ultimately the baby was my mental responsibility. If Pete didn't know something, it would be because I haven't let him know. And then I was responsible for like his doctor's appointments and stuff like that. And basically we went from us both being half responsible for Soph to me being solely responsible for Theo and half responsible for Soph, and him being half responsible for Soph. And this dynamic, it's only in hindsight that I can even see it. At the time, I did not understand that was the dynamic I was setting up. And Pete was setting up as well, but I'd say it was mostly me. I don't know whether it was a control thing. I don't know whether it was a wanting to prove my worth thing because I was undiagnosed ADHD, but I was drowning. And I was asking for help, but I didn't really know what to ask for. And so that was the dynamics we started our family life with. Not great when you're undiagnosed ADHD. And to be honest, it really damaged me mentally. I got to the point where I could not leave the house unless I had Pete with me. So I would absolutely have to force myself to take my baby out in the fresh air or to anything. We used to go to like baby sensory. We used to go for walks around the park, and slowly but surely all of those things stopped. For one, Theo was quite a handful at that age. He's such a good boy now, so I can say it. But he was very emotional as a child and very reactive. So it was difficult to handle him when I was out on my own, and I got scared and had such anxiety that I did not leave the house without Pete. As soon as he'd come home, I'd be like, he hasn't been out all day, can we just go to the park together? And he'd be like, oh, okay. And he was so tired. The house was a mess. I was trying to keep on top of it, but it felt like my failing when it was a mess. It never occurred to me that actually it's both of our failing. It's not just my failing. Pete lives here too. He's an adult too, and he's responsible too. Just because he's working and I'm on maternity leave doesn't make it all my fault if this house is a mess. But I didn't know that at the time. It's really hard to get outside of yourself. So anyway, without going through our whole story, I'll just quickly say that COVID hit and it changed a lot for me in a positive way. For one, I had like a mini breakdown because the anxiety was at an absolute peak. But what it did was it made me get out myself and get a bit of help and get a bit of perspective. And it also led me to my ADHD diagnosis. But from there, I've basically been rebuilding and also trying to rebuild the dynamic of our household. And it has been hard. We're at a spot today where it's better than it's ever been between Pete and I. But it's been really hard to get out of our well-defined roles. Considering I came from a non-traditional background, I certainly did build myself into a traditional hole. Like, I put myself in a box without even knowing it. And I'm not sure why I did that. But Pete's background is that his mum and dad split when he was 7. And he was predominantly raised by women. And I'm not sure because I'm not in his head, but we're 10 years in at this point, and on reflection, I think his ingrained belief, whether he knew it or not, was that women do everything, because he saw that his mum was a businesswoman, she was an entrepreneur, she worked a lot, but then his aunties did a lot of the childcare and stuff, like they shared it between them. She's got sisters and they all shared between them the duties of raising him and his brother. And his dad was in the picture as well, here and there, but he kind of lived away. It's a complicated thing that I won't get into, but mostly he has seen that women do it all and the boys are the princes, because him and his brother were treated like little princes. Not spoiled, they were good boys, but they wanted for nothing and the women did everything and they worked. And so I feel like that's just what he expects. He's not a misogynist, although I do find him coming out with things sometimes that I'm like, that doesn't fit with what I know you to be day to day. Like sometimes he comes out with views that I'm like, that doesn't even reflect the person I know. But in his mind, he thinks they're his beliefs, because when he was younger, he was really good at cricket, like a phenomenal cricket player. And so he ended up playing at like 12, 13 with a men's team, like in a men's cricket league. And because his dad was further away, he didn't see him as much or whatever, he ended up like looking up to these guys who were actually, I don't like to talk bad of anyone, and I don't know these guys, so I don't know. But from what I've heard, like it's exactly the type of man that I walk in the opposite direction from, you know, locker room talk. To me, it's like really immature, just stupid, like grow up, come on. But he was subject to this from a young age, and he was in the changing rooms with these guys, hearing all this and thinking they were legends. And I feel like that kind of formed a lot of what he says are his beliefs, which really doesn't make sense with the way he lives his life, because he is a sensitive guy, he is a lovely guy, and I would never be with someone who had those beliefs, but he does come out with it. Like when we're having discussions, sometimes I'm like, what are you talking about? So anyway, what we've gotten to now from that point, which was I was on maternity, I was at home, he was the breadwinner, he still is the breadwinner, but I obviously work now and the kids are in school. But what we've done in between that is, for one, the most important thing I've done, nothing to do with Pete, is I have worked on myself and my own self-worth. And honestly, that is the number one thing I would tell you to do. If you don't have time because you've got all these responsibilities and whatever, listen to audiobooks, listen to podcasts like this, drill it into your mind every day, your own worth and your value outside of being a mother or a partner or a woman, whatever it is, you are valuable no matter what. That's the number one. And I can tell you that, but you won't take it in or believe it unless you really work on your mindset and work on your sense of worth. And two is I gained perspective. I went to therapy, and honestly, it's given me so much perspective. Because with ADHD undiagnosed, we tend to become people pleasers and we look outside of ourselves to work out what is right and what is wrong. And I don't know about you, but I like to think of myself as a good person. I like to think of myself as doing the right thing even when it hurts me. I like to always do the right thing and don't like to put myself above other people because I feel like that's the wrong thing to do, or I used to think that was the wrong thing to do. To be selfish is wrong. Well, working on my mindset, going to therapy taught me that that is absolute nonsense. I'm a good person because I choose to be a good person, and I would never do something nasty to someone. I would never knowingly put myself in a position to gain something by someone else's misfortune. But that doesn't mean that I can't think of myself first. In fact, if I don't think of myself first, no one else will. I used to have a real dynamic with Pete, and I always wanted this dynamic. I think it's because my mum and dad worked together and lived together for so long. But I always thought the deal was, when we got married, that I'll look after you if you look after me. And that was where I played from. I really looked after him. I put my all into him. And he didn't do the same back. Pete looked after himself. And I was like, what? This is so selfish. I do everything for you. All I do is think about you in my every decision. And you just think about you. And I don't understand, like, I could not compute how I could pour so much into him and he would pour nothing into me. Actually, that's not fair. Not nothing. He would pour like 10% compared to my 100% into him. And I just could not fathom how he could be so selfish. I was in shock. I was like, how can you just take everything I'm giving and be like, okay, thanks, and then do what you want to do? And I only realised through therapy, okay, this is what she took me through. She was like, okay, so does he want you to pour 100% into him? And I was like, well, of course he does. Like, everyone wants someone to pour 100% into them. And she was like, yeah, but it's also causing you to be mad at him when he's not pouring his 100% into you. So do you think if you stopped pouring 100% into him, but you were less mad at him, he would be happier or sadder? And I was like, I don't know. And she was like, well, just try it then. So obviously, like, as a family, I still do all the things that help, but I didn't think about him all the time in everything I was doing. I wasn't like, oh, would Pete like this? I was just like, would I like this? Is this good for me? And is it detrimental to him? And if it's not detrimental to him or the family, then I get to do it. I don't have to spend my time thinking about them first. I can think about me first, as long as it's not knowingly detrimental or mean to them. And slowly, but it was really hard to do because I was so used to pouring everything into them. Slowly but surely, actually, I got really into that, and I reduced my self-imposed duties more and more and more. And you know what happened is Pete met me in the middle. He started pouring more into me. It's still not like 100%. It hasn't flipped completely, but we're just at a healthier ratio now where I think of him sometimes, he thinks of me sometimes, but mostly we look after ourselves. He didn't need me to look after him. I just was doing it and he was taking it because that's how it's set up. But the more I pulled away, the more he looked after himself, and I had more time for me and to look after myself. And so it made me less resentful, and I wasn't looking for him to look after me because I now had the time and capacity to look after me. And I hope that isn't too vague. I haven't really got any practical examples. I'll think of some for the future. If we do another episode on this, let me know. But basically how we're set up now is Pete pretty much 100% looks after Soph's responsibilities. I mean, she's a lot older now, so it's a lot easier because she's 15 and she looks after her own responsibilities a lot of the time. But if there's any, like, I don't know, the other week they had like a GCSE open evening, he is on that. I don't need to remind him of the dates. That is his responsibility. Things with their friends, whatever, birthdays, that's all his responsibility. And I will help. But instead of the dynamic being, I know what it is and I'll tell you what you need to do, Pete, it's the other way around. So he knows everything there is to do for her stuff. And then he'll ask me for help. Like, oh, have you got any wrapping paper? Can you just sort this for me? And I will say yes or I will say no. And then with Theo, it's probably more of like a 60-40 split. So I am 60% responsible for him because, you know, Pete has Sophia 50% of the time. So half of the time he is 100% responsible for her. And then he's 40% responsible for Theo 100% of the time. I hope that makes sense because we have Theo all the time. I'm in charge of him. It's only fair, you know, he is in charge of our other child, even though Soph's my stepdaughter. I do class her as my child. I just don't want to be in the mum role because she already has a mum. Does that make sense? But when she's here, I'm probably like the dad role, maybe. Yeah, that probably makes sense. I'm probably like the traditional dad role to Soph when she's here, and Pete's like the mum. So he is 40% responsible for Theo's stuff. When it comes to chores, there are jobs that we have 100% that are ours, that the other one will never ever do. Like Pete pretty much cooks 5 nights a week, and I will cook 1 to 2 nights a week, but not really. I do cook us really healthy lunches every day because we both work from home, but he cooks every evening for the whole family. And he takes out the bins, and I never do either of those things. I clean the bathroom, always. He's never ever cleaned the bathroom. That's not his job. I always do it. I get all the uniforms ready every single day. He does not ever do that. So there are certain jobs that we've taken, and we didn't really divide it up. We just kind of got jobs that we wanted to do, and they became our responsibility, and it's just a given. And I think that's really good to do. Like, sit down with your partner, write down all the jobs that you can think of and say, okay, pick a few of these, and do work out like who has more time after work and whatever, who has more capacity for certain things, who's better at certain things, and split it up. It doesn't have to be 50-50. You are both actually 100% responsible for your home, for your life, and for your kids. So when you're splitting stuff up, it doesn't have to be 50-50. Just work it out between you what you're happy with, and pick certain jobs that are always your responsibility. For example, I always get the shopping. Work out what you're happy with. But then there are also transient jobs in our household. So is that the right word? Transient? We'll go with it. So like cleaning the kitchen. Either one of us can do that. Filling the dishwasher. Either one of us can do that. The laundry. Either one of us can do that. It's predominantly me. I predominantly do those things, mainly because I work for myself. We both work from home, but he works for a company. So I can slot those things into my day. But oftentimes, especially over a weekend, he is doing those jobs, and it's without me saying anything. And if we look at our life as a whole, I still am the one mostly responsible mentally for life admin, for caregiving, to him, to me, to the kids, to the house. But it's a lot more. It used to be pretty much all me. It was 90% me. And now it's more, again, 60-40 to me. And there are times where I do resent that a little bit because I do work for myself. You're never going to get it absolutely perfect. But what I wanted to say today to you as a listener, I wanted to give you this example of how our household runs, and yours might be completely different. It might be completely different. But I'm assuming most of you listening are women. I know there are men listening, and I don't know what type of relationship you're in, but you can definitely take some advice from this as well. No matter who you are, you should never feel taken advantage of. Never, ever. In your relationship, you should never feel burnt out and taken advantage of and unsupported. But I want you to question yourself. Am I allowing this? Have I set things up this way? You shouldn't have to beg your partner for support when you're struggling. But are you doing things and stepping in, taking things off their plate that actually, if you left on their plate, there'd be a natural consequence for them, or there'd be a natural consequence for the family, but that you can live with for a short period, so that you can let them pick up that spinning plate and they can put it on their to-do list without you having to beg. Like, if you just stopped doing something, would the world end, and would they pick it up? And does it matter if they'd pick it up? But knowing your worth is the number one thing first, because you're not going to be able to do any of that if you believe that you're not worthy of the help, that you're not deserving. Because that's kind of where I was coming from when Theo was really young and Pete was away a lot. Because he was earning more, because he was the one paying for everything, I felt like it was all my responsibility and I wasn't good enough and I was a failure and I was letting him down. And even though I wanted the help and I needed the help, I really didn't think I had the right to ask for it, because I didn't see my own value and my own worth. In hindsight now, or if that was a friend and I was looking at them, I'd be like, do you know how much you're helping this man? He's working full time, yes, and he's traveling a lot and he's tired, but that is nowhere near as valuable as what you are doing at home. You are looking after his child. You are on your own all the time. I didn't have any friends at that point because I'd moved cities. I was away from family. When he does come home, I listened to him. I gave him that emotional support of what had happened at work that day. I was trying to be a good wife. I was trying to look good all the time. Like, I am valuable. And looking after children or a household or caregiving for their family or your family actually is much more valuable than money. Financial support, amazing. It's so valuable. But actually, it's probably one of the easiest things. And I think when we've got ADHD in particular, if you've bounced from job to job, I know I've never earned a lot of money. I was an actress, so I'd earn like a big pot of money and then I'd have nothing for months. I've never been rich, and money, to be honest, has never mattered to me that much. It just doesn't. But because I have never really made a lot of money, I've always found people that do earn money on a regular basis, like mythical creatures, like, oh my God, that's so amazing, that's so cool, and it's so hard. But actually, it's not that hard for the average person. It's harder with ADHD because we find it difficult to be consistent. But I did work for a year in like a 9-to-5 office job. Absolutely hated it. Couldn't stand it. It was like nails down a chalkboard. They were lovely people, but it just was not my vibe. But actually, the job was not hard. And I earned decent money. And it just wasn't hard. And compared to looking after a newborn all day and dealing with, different aged children together on my own, when I was postpartum, when I was absolutely shattered, when I'm away from home, no family, no friends, no nothing, it was actually so much harder and so much more valuable, even though it wasn't financially valuable. But if you want to swing it the other day and say, actually, like, how much would childcare cost for all those hours? It was very financially valuable. So this is what I'm trying to get across to you is work on yourself, know your worth and your value, and you will find it a lot easier to stick to your guns and make it a more fair distribution of responsibilities and ask for that support when you need it and know that you deserve that support. And if you don't get it, it's not right. And it doesn't mean you have to make any decisions. I'm not telling you to split up with your partner or anything, but just knowing in yourself that you deserve the support and they're not giving it to you, and you know that's not right, is empowering in a way, and it helps you to be more compassionate to yourself when you can't juggle all the balls at the same time, because actually all those balls aren't your responsibility. You should have a partner that is helping you to juggle those balls, and if they're not, that's not your fault, it's their fault, and actually you're doing a great job. So I hope that helped. Any more relationship questions or household questions? I do like to talk about this quite a lot. But yeah, work on you first and realise where you're contributing to people taking advantage of you. Where have you set that up yourself? I hope you all have a lovely week. Check out all the links below. There's some freebies down there. Check out the Body Doubling Club. We are loving it over there. And there's a new video bonus this week. and I will see you all next Friday. Bye.